computers.
That was a little louder than I expected. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's hearing of the Tuscaloosa Historic Preservation Commission. I am Kathy Pagani, and I am the chair of the commission. I would like to invite my fellow commission members to introduce themselves to you. We'll begin on my right, please.
Mary Harmon Young.
Joseph Cox.
Bryson Gifford.
Brett Clark.
David Nelson.
Sally Davis.
Today's date is July 13th, 2022, and the time is 5 o'clock p.m. I just want to make a few preliminary notes. Right now, our meeting format has been adjusted to allow for virtual comment in order to protect the health and well-being of our community. We want to thank everyone for supporting this change, and we appreciate everyone's patience as we work through this evening's agenda. Joining us tonight from city staff we have Mr. Chad Hobbs, who's the Associate City Attorney, Mr. Zach Pons, the Acting Director of Planning. We have Ms. Haley Harris, Planner, Mr. Jonathan Bowen, Planner, and Ms. Angie Terrell is the Administrative Assistant, all with the Office of Urban Planning Development. Thank you. And assisting with audiovisual this evening is Mr. Kevin Jones. Let the record show that Mr. Morris has just joined the hearing. The general purpose of the Historic Preservation Commission is to serve and protect the buildings, sites, and structures of historic significance and interest in Tuscaloosa's historic neighborhoods. We are governed by Chapter 20, Article 2 of the Code of Tuscaloosa, which includes design guidelines that are posted on the city's website. Our decisions are based on these design guidelines and do not consider use or occupancy. We do consider such factors as architectural style, appropriateness of materials, and how the structure relates to other structures in the immediate neighborhood in determining the appropriateness of an application. Any approval of an application requires 5 affirmative votes. If the certificate is approved, please be aware that there will be a final inspection by city staff of these approved applications to ensure that they were in compliance with what we approved this evening. This is a public hearing. It is televised live on local cable, streamed online through Facebook, and is being recorded to be posted on the city's website. Some participants in this meeting are joining through video conference or phone conference. We've made a few adjustments to our procedures to allow fair participation in person and virtually. We ask for proper decorum, civility, and respect for others at all times. Prior to this meeting, notice was sent out to adjacent property owners, and the public has been notified of the applications to be presented tonight. This hearing is a chance for the applicant to present his or her case, for the public to make their views known about the project, and for commission members to gather relevant facts about the application before making its decision. The basic procedure is as follows. City staff will introduce the application. The applicant will then have a chance to make any comments. The commissioners will then have an opportunity to ask the applicant questions about the case. I will then open the hearing to public comment. For those participating virtually, staff will notify you when you're next in line to speak. When it's your turn, staff will introduce you to the commission, and you'll be provided with up to 3 minutes to share your comments. At the close of public comment, the commission will then discuss the matter and vote on the application. Any person wishing to speak on behalf of another person, group, or entity shall provide written authorization by that person, group, or entity being represented. Immediate family members, and we define that as a spouse, a parent, or a child, do not have to provide such written authorizations when speaking on behalf of another immediate family member. And we ask all the applicants to please leave the signs in your yard. City staff will be around in the next couple of days to pick them up. Let's see now. Let me ask the commission members, you've had a chance to review this evening's agenda items. Do any of the members have a conflict of interest as defined by Section 6 of the commission bylaws with any of these items? Good, hearing none, let's move on. I'd like to ask city staff if proper notification has been provided for the agenda items.
It has.
Great, thank you very much. Well, let's move on with our first application for this evening.
Good afternoon, Commission. First case is HPC 2422. Diane Walsh petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for a fence on the property located at 7 Hillcrest. This is in the Hillcrest Historic District and Council District 2. This property is zoned R1. Here we have an aerial of the property as well as surrounding properties. Here we have an image of the primary structure on the property. Here's the adjacent northern property, 7A Hillcrest, and the adjacent southern property at 8 Hillcrest. So the proposal before you is to keep a constructed chain link fence. This fence currently does exist. The reason that it is being brought before you is because it is a side front yard facing fence, so it is within your purview of voting on. Here again is the primary structure on the property. This is the fence in question. As you can tell, it is located on the side yard. The last section closest to the tree, it does abut into the front yard, so it does protrude into that front yard there. And here is another view from the rear of the property towards the front or facing towards the road. This is an image from the public right-of-way. It shows where the fence kind of extends past that front porch area. The fence in the rear yard was installed from a previous owner, so this portion of the fence is not up for discussion. But it does match the fence we are talking about does match the fence in the rear yard. So here's a closer up image of that chain link fence in the rear yard. This is an image from 12 and 13 Hillcrest. As you can see, they do have a chain link fence. So this is an example of the fence being used throughout the neighborhood. This was the only examples that we saw of a chain link fence in the Hillcrest area.
And where are those located relative to the structure? Are these backyard fences?
So these would be considered side yard. Material is a chain link fence. And here are the applicable design guidelines, which outlines the inappropriate fence material. We did receive 10 public comments in support of the fence, and the petitioner is here to speak in person.
Can you go back one page and just to look at the design guidelines? Thank you.
Sure.
So is everybody clear with these? All right, thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any questions for city staff? Nope, thank you. Let me invite the applicant to come to the podium, please. And would you mind stating your name and your address for the
My
record?
name is Diane Walsh at 7 Hillcrest.
Ms.
Tuscaloosa.
Thank you for coming tonight. What can you tell us? How did this fence come to be?
Well, there was one in the back that matches it, so I just didn't, I bought the house. They didn't say, I mean, I knew it was a historical district, but I didn't know there was rules. So it matched the one in the back, so I didn't see any reason why not to put one on the side to divide the property line from the neighbors next door.
And that fence ends at that tree, is that correct?
Do what?
That the fence ends at the tree.
Yes.
Just want to make
And
sure.
it's a great big magnolia tree. And I knew to go all the way over, I didn't think about ruling. I put it all the way over that way because that big magnolia tree just breaks habit with the yard. It's just big magnolia leaves all over it. So now that has stopped that problem. But I created another one and I didn't mean to.
Do any of the commission members have questions for Ms. Walsh?
Was there any particular purpose for which the fence was put up?
To divide the 2 yards. The neighbors moved and their new neighbors coming in and I didn't want that. I didn't want to worry about them using that driveway, so just put the fence up.
Are there any other questions? Right. Ms. Walsh, thank you.
Okay.
Something may come up in discussion and we may invite you back, but for now you may have a seat.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I understand from city staff we have 10 emails in support of this application. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? Then let me close the floor to public comment. And just, Mr. Bowen, just in general, what were the comments about this? Just
They were along the lines of not seeing it as an issue, that they hardly notice that it's there, and that they have no issue with it remaining.
thank you very much. All right, so I'll close the floor to public comment and let's open the floor to discussion by commission members. This is unusual. We are looking at essentially at a retroactive approval of a material that typically is on our unapproved materials list. However, in this neighborhood, chain link was appropriate at the time.
Can we bring the list of applicable design guidelines up, please? So, it is on a list that chain link is a prohibited material. However, there is a historical wire on there. I don't really understand what the context of this was when these were written. However, going back to what I really believe is the spirit of the design guidelines for fences, on the previous page, you're talking about continuity of the neighborhood, you're talking about complementing the buildings. I mean, for instance, do not exceed the average height of fences and walls. To put a 6-foot privacy fence here, I think would exceed the average height of the fences in the neighborhood. This is kind of a post-war area where chain link would have been a prevalent material kind of throughout the history of this. I think that looking at it within the context of the neighborhood, that this would be an area where this particular fence could be deemed something that would be acceptable. And I don't want in any way that to be construed as an acceptance by the commission that would be taken as a blanket statement elsewhere.
Right. I think that was well put. What do any of you think on this one? You know, when you look at this, had Ms. Walsh come to us for, say, a side yard fence and for, appropriate application, if we were looking at other materials than chain link, it would be discordant with what's already there in the neighborhood and what she already has in the backyard. So, this is a really tricky one for us because, as Mr. Morris states, we don't want to set a precedent that chain link is all of a sudden okay, but we have to think about these applications within their context and also the spirit of, these small neighborhoods when they were designed and built.
It's also notable that it's a particularly small section of chain link fence that she erected. It's my understanding per city staff that we're not reviewing in any way the backyard fence or any other portion of the fence, though I suppose it provides context to what she has erected.
Any other thoughts?
Motion to approve as presented.
We have a motion to approve the application as presented this evening, and I have a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, so the motion is to approve the application as presented this evening. We shall vote, beginning on my right, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Ms. Walsh, you're, well, you're welcome. Thank you for coming to us. your application has been approved. And just know, moving forward, being in a historic district, any exterior changes on your property, check with city staff before you move forward, and they can help guide you along. You're welcome. Have a good evening.
All right. Next case we have is HPC 2522, Cooper Shattuck petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for a material change to windows on the primary structure located at 6 College Park in the College Park Historic District. This is in Council District 4. Here we have an image of the zoning. This is an R3 property. Here we have an aerial overview of the property as well as surrounding properties. Here's an image of the primary structure on the property. This is the adjacent northern property and the adjacent southern property. The petitioner is proposing to replace 24 existing windows. They're currently composed of wood. The replacements will be aluminum clad wood windows. They are double glazed with interior and exterior buttons that will match the original windows. The size, location, color, texture, and visual appearance of the windows will be maintained. The windows will also be installed from inside the house, so they will preserve the moldings, casings, and other architecturally important trim features. So again, here's the primary structure on the property. And now we're going to get into just some of the images of the windows to be replaced around the property. These are on the side of the property. Here's an image of the front and the side property. The shutters will also be replaced. They completed an expedited review. They will match the materials currently there. And here we have a couple of closer up images of the windows to be replaced. Materials are for aluminum clad wood windows and the wood shutters. And here we have the material spec sheets for the windows. And here are the applicable design guidelines. We received no public comment for this application. The petitioner is here in person.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for city staff? All right, thank you very much. Let me invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come forward. And would you mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
Cooper Shattuck, 1514 Deering Place. Just by clarification, we've not moved out of Deering Place to College Park. I am bringing this on behalf of the petitioners. Technically, the owner is R. Jammer 6 LLC. It's an LLC made up of two brothers, Tim Kelly and Joe Kelly. Tim and his wife Melissa live in Houston. They're both UA graduates. He's a member of the Culver House Board of Visitors and was recently the chair. And Joe and Sheila both graduated from UA and live in Dothan. And so this is a place for the family to gather here in Tuscaloosa.
Is there anything more you want to tell the commission about this application?
Mullenbrock Construction, Mike Mullenbrock is here as well to answer any questions you have about the construction. But basically what they're doing is replacing those windows that don't function. This home was built in the 20s. A lot of them have been painted shut for probably 30 or 40 years, and they're not functional. And the Kellys simply wanted to replace them with something that matches what's there, but that works. both for safety purposes and ventilation.
Are there any questions for Mr. Shattuck?
This may be a question for the contractor. There is some question in the description about whether it's just sashes or it would include the casing and the frame of the windows would be replaced as well. Just so we have a good understanding based on some previous history about the way that the exterior appearance of windows are, especially on siding. I'd like some clarification on what exactly is being replaced.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to? The sash.
The sashes only, okay.
That's helpful, thank you. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you. If something comes up, we'll invite you back.
Thanks.
We've had no public comments submitted. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or, excuse me, opposition to the application this evening? Then let me close the floor to public comment and open the floor to discussion and motion by commission members. We're maintaining the original number, location, size, using an approved material here.
I see nothing to object to.
All right, so I have a motion to
Second.
approve, and I
Second.
have several seconds here, thank you. So any further discussion before we move on this? All right, so the motion has been to approve the application as presented this evening. Let us vote, beginning on my left, please.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 Mr. Shattuck, your application has been approved this evening. Should anything change, please see city staff before you proceed, and good luck. Thank you.
Next case is HPC 2622. Kevin Pake petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of an accessory structure on the property located at 30 Autobahn Place in the Autobahn Place Historic District. This is in Council District 4. This property is also Zone R3. Here we have an aerial of the property as well as surrounding properties. Here's an image of the primary structure located on the property. This is the adjacent northern property at 31 Autobahn Place. And the adjacent southern property. And then here is the adjacent western property. So the proposal is to add a garage with a portico with storage all in one structure. The garage will be constructed of red brick and wood, which will match the materials on the primary structure. So again, here is the primary structure on the property. So this is a drawn site plan. We do have a more detailed site plan on the following slide. It gives you a general idea of where the carport garage is going to go. The next slide does note that this structure is 5 feet away from that no build line, so it does meet our zoning ordinance. Also, you see the driveway turn located just north of the carport garage. And here is the more detailed site plan. So again, you see the driveway to the left. You have the garage with the pass-through, and then also the driveway that extends beyond the garage area. We did receive some questions just about the size of this, and which I believe we can speak to after the case has been presented. But it does fall within our zoning ordinance and meets all codes that apply.
Would you be able to use a pointer and just go over the garage, the driveway, all of those little things, just to make it really clear?
So here we have the garage area. Garage area to the left with the number 7. The pass-through I will let the petitioner speak to exactly what that is going to look like. On the left-hand side, we have the driveway, and then we also have this extended driveway at the top.
Thank you.
So just, because it's all directly behind the structure?
I'm sorry?
It's all directly behind the home?
Yes.
Okay.
There's no trees that need to be cut down, or it's just grass.
Right. And here we have some elevations of what the structure would look like.
And the height is, right, I just want to know the full height. Do you see anything there, Ms. Young? Okay. Excuse me. We can ask we'll ask the applicant.
All right, so the materials are the red brick, the asphalt shingles, and then aluminum clad wood windows that would go on the garage structure. So here is the material spec sheet. You can see that the brick lap wood, which would match that of the primary structure on the property. The images at the bottom is an example of what the aluminum clad wood window could look like. Also, on the right, we have the proposed door. The petitioner can speak more clearly about the materials for the window and the door. And here are applicable design guidelines. We received one comment about just questioning the project, but none in support or in opposition of the project.
Thank you. Are there any questions for city staff? Bless you. Any questions for city staff? No.
Just, would you mind going back to the front rendering and then just so that I can look at it? Back one. The four drawings.
The four drawings.
Any other questions for city staff? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bowen. Let me invite the applicant to step forward, please. And could you state your name and address for the record, please, sir?
My name is Kevin Paik, and I'm at 30 Autobahn Place.
Is there anything more you'd like to tell us about the project? I think we wanted to hear a bit more about the pass-through and...
I actually had Evans Fitz come over today to see what he suggests and stuff like that. He was real helpful, and again, with that setback lines kind of making things squinchy, and really all I want, the whole backyard's vacant. There's no, like I said, there's no trees, it's just grass, and it's been that way, I guess, since 1938. So the driveway is extremely narrow with our large cars of the day. You know, I need a turnaround somehow, and then I would like to have storage for my cars. I don't want to get burned up in the sun. And a little bit of storage. I only have 1,250 square feet of the house. I'm going to build a structure. I want, you know, a storage or a work shed, you know, to put the lawnmowers in and the old stuff away, the Christmas trees and stuff like that. So. Because it's going to be, and it is a house that I'll be living in. It's not a rental home or a game day or anything like that. So I will be in there, so that's why I would want some type of a turnaround. And, just, I'll be happy with a carport in a storage building or something, just a structure back there. I just want to come in front of the board. This-
Staff, can we go to the site plan again? Do you mind? I think it's a little clearer than that. And then
So what you would do, you would drive up, I would leave a car in the portico, and there will be I have, for 2 cars, that's why I have a garage, to lock some stuff up, and then, of course, there's your storage, kind of basic, and I have to, like I said, I had to set it back a little bit, squinching in about 5 feet, but just make sure I have a small compact car.
what is the height of the
The
structure?
height is not going to exceed higher than the existing roof on the house. It's probably about, I'm not positive, it's probably about 5 or 6 feet shorter than the existing house. And the backyard gets a little bit lower, so.
We go to the elevations.
Yeah, it's 10 feet.
That's to the edge of the
You're
roof,
talking
though,
about height.
wherever you're marking. I'm just
Yeah, I'll
wondering if the Yep.
And there is, I'm not sure if it's up there, but there is a roof line
Mhm.
on one of those. Should be, anyway. I probably didn't put that on there. See what that's.
No, we're good, thank you.
That didn't say how high the actual pitch of the roof is.
Can we go to the photos of the primary structure? Is this the only one that we have?
It goes in like an A-frame right there, and then in the back it goes back into a pitch.
You're showing a water table and row lock and all of that kind of at the base of this structure, and I'm not seeing that on the primary structure. Is there a reason for that?
A water table?
Yes, just go back to the elevations, please, Haley. See how there's the row lock, and it says brick water table with row lock at that top left?
Yeah.
And then on all the bottom two. And then the primary structure, it's just plain brick that goes to the
Yeah, it'll be
ground. Is there a,
brick and concrete, or, wherever there might have to be some wood, between the roof line. And
I was just wanting to know if there's a reason for it being different from the primary structure in the detailing. It's the only reason for my question.
What the, well, I mean, if I could go ahead and put lap siding on there, I would like that, but if not, I'd make it all brick. So it doesn't really, the material outside doesn't really bother because it's such a small structure. If y'all want it all brick, or I can make it half, a little bit, some lap siding. But I think in this drawing, he has whatever the first 2 or 3 feet brick and the rest of it lap, but I'd be more than happy to make it all brick. And again, the windows will be the same windows that y'all let me approve last time I was up here, so that's why I didn't really get into that. And then, of course, the door, I was just gonna put a couple of metal doors.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Paik at this time? I mean, it's interesting observation. This accessory structure really tries to match the existing structure in many ways, but we have this lap siding versus the full brick on the main structure.
I'm just not really sure I understand. If I look at the top right elevation here, I see some brick to the right. This is the back, right?
Yeah,
And I see a little
the
bit
back almost looks like the front because I have to,
And I see this
Get the-
little strip of brick on the back.
That's the
Next.
structure beyond.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, that's the house.
Yeah, that's the house.
That makes sense.
And it's real, up on top, that's kind of deceiving too, because you see the double, looks like double, that's doors. So that's the existing house. It took me a minute or two, so that really, the building itself, if you look at the bottom right, the bottom right is the same as the bottom, or top right, without the. Yeah, bingo.
Any questions or comments as we consider this application? Well, Mr. Page, I'll tell you what, have a seat.
Sure.
If something comes up, we'll bring you back
Okay.
and let us sort of mull this over.
It's a lot to digest.
There's a lot to digest always with these things. Excuse me. We've had, let me open the floor to public comment. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? And we've had no submitted comments, so let me close the floor to public comment and let's begin a discussion with the commission members.
Can we pull up the applicable design guidelines?
Could I ask a city staff question? He was talking about the two doors and I saw the garage doors, the aluminum door. Are we voting on the doors, even though we don't know which doors, or is that later, or?
So the whole accessory structure would be, is this for the actual home?
I guess I was just wondering about there wasn't anything about which doors. I saw the garage doors aluminum, but he was talking about metal doors for the two doors for the storage room.
Yes, you would need to take that into account in your approval.
Sounds good.
And these guidelines are probably not the most applicable up here as opposed to Article 7A1 is more of where you probably would find the regulations. I can read those to you.
Yeah, please.
So 3 bullet points here. Locate garages in the rear of the main structure, set back at least 5 feet from the side yard property line. They should complement the main structure through similar materials, including siding, windows, and roof. And then garage doors, when used, should be compatible with the main structure or the character of the district. Typically, garage doors should be metal, steel, or aluminum, fiberglass, or wood, and in keeping with the character of the main structure and district.
Thank you.
The garage door actually faces back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the interesting things is I pulled up Google Earth, and when I'm looking back towards the south of Autobahn, almost where that kind of cut-through road back is to the one-way, the 4 homes next to it all have some kind of accessory structure. Looks like 2 are decently set back from the home, and it looks like maybe one at least touches it or has a portage. I don't remember exactly, but it is interesting that, the neighboring properties, there you can kind of see, have those accessory structures there.
Thank you for that. Mr. Morris brought up an interesting observation about the siding materials on the accessory structure.
It just, the fact that this is an all brick house and it talks about the complementing the primary structure on materials, it just,
Yeah, I agree.
I do think that I could be wrong. I know one house for sure. There is a good bit of wood lap and brick structures in the home. I mean, in the neighborhood, particularly where the facade tends to be brick and other portions.
I guess my question too is, I don't know, sometimes, can they get brick that will match that brick? That'll look like it is pretty much the same?
I mean, that brick,
That's
just
a standard brick.
red brick, yeah.
I mean, it might take like a little bit to wash off. I mean, to wash off in a way. But
Age it or
after
something.
6 months, it'd be pretty close. I will say that if you look at 2 houses down, both of the 2 accessory structures both match identical siding on siding, and then the other one is siding as well, and it's siding. They match identical.
You know, our guidelines do say some things, and this is just food for thought. They say some things about trying to preserve the original structure and to not have it too confusing as to what's old and what's new. So, I mean, there is a counter argument to matching the brick.
True. Why does the roof go up? Is there to that odd flat place on the top?
That's just the way the roof line works. The building is narrower in plan, and so the roof comes up, and then there's a small ridge, and then it jumps to another ridge. If you look at the plan, yeah. So see how the height of the roof would be less on this storage space than it would be on the garage and the carport.
Okay.
That siding's identical to that. That gray siding. You see where that was changed with that gray siding's identical.
Mr. Pons, I'm wondering, can you go back to the design guidelines that you read to us a few moments ago? Just what the phrasing says about compatible materials.
Yes. Garages and carports should complement the main structure through the use of similar building materials, including siding, windows, and roof. If windows are to be installed in the garage, they should match or complement the window pattern of the main structure while maintaining an appropriate scale and proportion to the garage. That's
Yeah.
basically it.
That's it. No, that's
There's
exactly
not
what I
many
wanted.
guidelines
I
on
wanted to hear that again.
accessory
That
structures, yeah.
complement the main structure and similar materials. I wanted to hear that again. It should, not must, but it should. Do we have any questions for Mr. Paik?
I will say that the only, like, I mean, this driveway is pretty tight. The only place that you would actually see the brick would be on the drive aisle, more or less. The port, yeah. And it'd be hard to, I mean, you'd have to be standing right here at the corner of his lot looking for, you know, to, you have to be looking for it, yeah.
And it is separated, right?
Mhm.
Not so much.
And if we're going to continue the dialogue, I'll bring them back up to the podium so we can get this on the record. No, don't, please don't apologize. It's all useful information. I just thought if we continue it, I do want to bring you back up and let's just get this on here. But is there anything else for Mr. Paik? Are we good with this? Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, yeah, I do have one thing. I think
Okay.
this project I've been doing, these guys have done a fantastic job. I know I sound like a brown nose, but really they have. I thought, I've heard horror stories, and I hadn't had one yet. I think y'all have done a good job. And like I said, I had Evans come out today. I'm like, oh boy, I feel like I went to the principal. But no, it was real helpful information, and so far, so good.
Okay. Well, thank you. We don't have any other questions, do we, Mr. Paik? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll let you sit down again. All right, so commission members, we've had some really interesting discussion about this application here, about the materials and about the location and about various other things. What are our thoughts here on this?
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of conflicted on the brick or the lap siding. I mean, I think everything else is fine, but I mean, that's my only.
I got a
question,
hard
kinda-
time getting over it. I just got through convincing myself on a fence that it was okay because of the context, and then we've got 3 or 4 structures going up and down each side of this building that they're all exactly the same materials with the accessory structures.
I think, yeah, I think so too.
So there's not going to be like an extra power meter or air conditioner somewhere that we're not seeing on this plan, though, right?
I think it's in the back. It's largely invisible. It's not even connected to the house. I think we regularly approve things in the back of houses that are a little bit different. I tend to lean toward what the homeowner wants. I understand the other point of view as well.
I just think with the neighborhood context, yes, we have other accessory structures, but like Jordan said, they, seem pretty identical as far as the materials to the home, like it was a seamless, at the same time process.
Mr. Paik, would you like to come up for a second? I've got a question for you. I'm not sure if I understood you to say earlier that you were fine with either siding or brick. Did you say that?
It's up to y'all. I mean, it's probably about a 500 square foot structure, so it's not gonna cost that much difference, brick and
Right,
lap.
so,
'Cause lap's expensive too. Have you seen the prices lately?
right, exactly. Well, so you understand where the discussion is going with the commission, and we are governed by the design guidelines.
Yeah,
And the design
that's-
guidelines are fairly clear here. And so I just want to make sure we're okay with city council here, or, with the city attorney, that Mr. Paik is okay with either siding or the brick. The commission, based on the design guidelines, is leaning more towards brick from the discussion I've had here, but we'll just hang on for a second there. If Mr. Paik would like to amend the application to have the material as brick, what's the process?
So, just turning back to what the design guidelines say, and I'll probably give a longer answer to this question than what you're looking for. But the design guidelines say that the accessory structure, the detached garage or carport, should complement the main structure, and it's a factual determination for the commission to determine whether the proposed design does in fact complement the main structure or not. If the commission felt like brick would complement the main structure and a different material would not accomplish that, Mr. Paik were to just orally here amend his application to side the building with all brick, then the commission could make a motion and approve the application on that condition. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's exactly what we needed to hear. Mr. Paik, what are your thoughts on that?
That's fine.
All right.
I'm good with that.
So, commission members, any questions for Mr. Paik? So I think, Ms. Harmon-Young made a really interesting comment about just the context in this particular neighborhood, what's going on. Commission members have been looking at images. So I'll tell you what, have another seat. Thank you. We're giving you your exercise this evening.
Jordan, is there anything special about the coursing of that brick or anything that they need to pay attention to? There's not.
Not that I can tell from the photo that we have. There's not anything that appears from just looking at the street views or riding by or anything like that. It's definitely not the green painted brick house across the street or anything that has a whole lot of ornate detailing.
So we now have the application amended, so the material is compatible, it's the same as the main structure. What do we think?
Motion to approve as amended.
Thank you.
With brick to match.
Yep. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Great. So we have a motion to approve the application amended so that the material is now brick to match the house, the main structure. Any further discussion by commission members?
And I'll add that the main reason was because if you look at all the other accessory structures, they match the main house. It would be different if some of the other ones were party sided and then the actual house was brick, but they all pretty much match the house to be very complementary, as the guidelines say.
Right. And I think that's a really important point to underscore with this application. So we have a motion, we have a second. Are we all set to vote? I take that as a yes. All right, so the motion is to approve the application as presented with the amendment or the change that the main material is going to be brick, not siding, that will match the main house. We will begin voting on my right.
Yes.
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 Mr. Paik, your application has been approved with that change of the material. If anything else changes or you run into something, please see city staff before you proceed, and good luck with your project. Have a good evening.
Next case is HPC 2722, John David Blake petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for material and design change to windows on the primary structure at 200 Reed Street. This is in the Caplewood Historic District in Council District 4. Here's the zoning of the property. It's a R3 zone property. Here we have an aerial overview of the property. Here's an image of the primary structure on the property. So the window change will be to all windows on the primary structure. Here's the adjacent northern property and the adjacent southern property. The proposal is to replace all existing steel windows with vinyl windows. This would change the windows from single pane, single hung to double pane, double hung windows. Again, here's the primary structure on the property. And here we have some closer up of the windows on the property. Here are some additional pictures of the windows on the property, on the primary structure. The materials are for vinyl windows. Here are the material spec sheets. And here are applicable design guidelines. We did receive one public comment in opposition of the windows. The petitioner is here in person.
Any question for city staff?
What did it say the existing windows were again?
Steel windows.
Right? Yeah. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come to the podium, please. And would you mind stating your name and your address for the record, please, sir?
I'm John David Blake, and I am one of the. It's an LLC with consists of me, my brother, and mother, and we are in the process of full renovation. We purchased these when I was in 2003 when I was a student at UA. We recently paid them off. We've been looking at doing upgrades, and my mother was really adamant about the windows. They're that old. They've been painted at some point, but they're that 1940s. They're like ice boxes in the winter and big gaps. So our main reason for replacing was just energy efficiency. And we, at the time that we ordered the windows last December, our contractor, he thought he had checked all the boxes. He asked the inspector about as far as changing to vinyl, would it affect the fire code? He said no, proved everything. Structurally, they're going to look the same. We're not changing anything on the outside, except two or three of the windows are going to be, to meet fire code, they're going to be casement windows. That's the only reason we had to change that. And it's strictly just for energy efficiency for the tenants.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Blake? Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. And I understand we've had one submitted public comment in opposition to this. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to the application? All right, I'll close the floor to public comment, and let's open the floor to discussion by commission members. If we can go back to approved materials for windows, to that slide for a second, if we can. Inappropriate, we have vinyl there, and we have denied vinyl in the past.
I also, looking at the spec sheets, don't see the 2/2 configuration that is on the existing structure. You know, I'm seeing just a standard gridless double hung window.
Let's go back to the spec sheet. You can for a second. So Mr. Blake, the question, come on up for a second. The question that Mr. Morris had was just that you don't see the dividers in the window like you see on the structure currently.
Oh, yeah, on the casement ones,
On any of them.
So if you go back to the structure, go here. Can you guys highlight what we're talking about? Just circle it and kind of.
So you see how you have a upper sash and a lower sash, and then
Yes.
you have those divided lights. The upper sash is divided horizontally, and the lower one is as well. So
Uh-huh.
it looks like 4 vertical sections.
yes, sir.
So that's another aspect of the design guidelines, you know, sort of matching the pattern that you have on the originals.
I believe those are the living room windows. Those are the ones that, to meet fire code, had the 3 casement windows. They're gonna replace those.
Thank you. I think we're good for now.
Can you show us the 3 casement windows on the next, or verify which one they are? This one? Is it this one?
I assume it's type 5 and type 6.
That's what I wondered, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Is it
well,
5 or 6?
well, it's just 5.
Is it?
Well,
I can't.
no, the center section of 6 is a casement as well. It says casement on 5, and then you got 2 fixed picture windows flanking a casement window on 6.
It's 6.
Have you considered an aluminum clad wood window?
Yeah, what happened was when we ordered these in December, we didn't know, we were unaware, we were in the historic district. Our contractor, there was like a 6-month, these are custom windows, so we went ahead and paid up front, and so we're kind of out this money if we don't use these exact ones. We wish we would have known. That's on us. We know that was our fault. The only thing is, we've noticed we went with the contractor. He took us down, and we actually went to the existing houses on Caplewood and down Reed, and he's in the 70s. We couldn't tell from the street. We would actually walk up to the house to see. We couldn't tell if the windows were vinyl or wood. The one directly behind us, they're vinyl. I don't know if they went through the proper, through y'all to do it, but you're visually not going to be able to tell the difference at all. Like, for instance, on ours, because they've been painted, it's hard to even tell they're metal. But if we would have known when we ordered these, we definitely would have looked at something different. And I guess it's on us and the contractor, but the reason we wanted to go with these is we can't, there are windows now. We bought them. They came in a couple weeks ago. We either use them or we're out the money.
And I guess you don't paint the vinyl, right? I mean, you just leave it.
I know these are, I'm not sure on that.
the light pattern and configuration just bothers me so much more than material in this particular instance. Being that they're steel existing with a very narrow sash and all. I mean, the profile has always been kind of the spirit of it with the materials wanting to go with the clad wood and all of that, because most of those times that would be trying to replace wood windows. And I'm sure I've said this up here before, I think that our guidelines were kind of written around replacing wood windows and not around replacing anything else. Now, that being said, that does not imply that I feel that these are acceptable. The light pattern and changing them to casement windows and essentially it not having any similarity at this point, I can't agree with it.
Fair enough, well stated. Other comments?
I guess my question would be for the attorney, the city attorney. He's mentioned that he's wanting to do this to bring it up to fire code. Do we need to take that a part of this decision?
I'm sorry, Mr. Clark, could you repeat the question?
The applicant mentioned he's doing this on some windows to bring it up to fire code. So do we have to take that into effect on this decision of if
I think you can certainly, the commission can certainly take it into consideration. At the end of the day, the commission's jurisdiction is still to determine whether the application and the project as proposed does come within the design guidelines. So in other words, the fire code doesn't trump the design guideline considerations on materials and things of that nature.
Can I state that was one of the reasons we originally, when we started a year ago, looked into the renovation. These have one bathroom. We just wanted to add one. Then we found out we were going to have to add to make it for the fire code. The windows, we had the sprinklers in the whole building and hardwired smoke alarms in every room. So we've had to gut the whole building. We ended up taking along doing a major renovation. The power, we found out, would have to be shut off for months. So that was part of the main reason we had to do all this, was to get it up to code. So that's why the windows are not going to look exactly, just those ones he was talking about, the divided ones are going to be different.
So how many windows are we talking about that are being, I know you're doing all the windows, but as we talk about the casement and then the concern Mr. Morris has about the dividers in the windows, which windows are we talking about specifically? Can we go back to that picture? I just wanted to get a better image of what's happening.
Yeah, it would be, I believe, 5. It's a 5 unit, and it would be the living room in each unit.
Will be casement windows.
Yes, ma'am.
So where are those? Does anybody have the pointer they can kind of circle?
Yeah. Okay. So this is one here. Let me grab
Okay.
one there. So I believe they're saying that casement would be so that in an instance of a fire, they swing open the 3 for them to get out. That's I guess I'm not sure exactly on the fire code, but that's the windows they're talking about. So that's living room as well as, actually there's 2 bedrooms here. This is a bedroom and this one as well at the top.
So those are being changed to the casement windows, is that correct?
I'm assuming.
Okay.
And I'm not positive. Maybe because the one, like for instance, this one, that would be an escape. I don't know how I would have to look at that. I don't know check with the fire, check on that, because they could get. I mean, really, how are they? I guess they're going to have to jump from the 2nd floor. But if one is available, I don't know that both would have to be, I would have to look at the check with that. I'll get with my contractor to find that out.
Well, we're just kind of trying to get an idea of what the
Yeah, I
building,
get
the
you.
proposed windows will look like here. I'm trying to get my head around all of this.
Yeah, we're hoping they're gonna actually look better than this, and the main reason, like we said, was just for energy efficiency. When I was living there, when I was a student, those old windows, there's such large gaps between the panes. Like, we had wasps make nests behind the blinds. We didn't know were there. There's large enough gaps for them to come through. So those were something we always been interested in replacing. We just we didn't know we were in the historic district.
Right, yeah, no, I understand that. And now here we are, talking about these.
So doesn't the reverse of this building have almost just as many windows to be replaced? Is that correct?
Not quite.
I mean, is there a backside, or was
Yeah,
that, have we seen the backside? This is just the front of the building, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is the back just pretty much the same?
Not really. The back has the kitchens and a bath, so there's a single window, more like these are bathrooms, but they're more similar to this one.
But
on
your
the back.
proposal is to replace those also, correct?
Yes, we're gonna replace all windows for.
Do we have a photo of the back of the building? No photos of the back? No photos of the back of the building?
I have some on my phone. I don't know how. That's the side on the right. That's the northern side.
Zach, can you pull up Google, like the street image on the main screen?
More single windows back there?
All right, so pulling this back, we have vinyl as the proposed material. We're not matching the light patterns here. The casement windows, I have I worry about the fire code issues with casement, and I sort of can understand that. You know, when the building was constructed, it was a lot different. And if that's what fire code is saying, it's just we're matching the opening, or it's a little wider. You're making it a little wider.
I believe so. That they would swing open for them to
Yeah.
exit the building.
Okay, but it really comes down to the two big things for me are vinyl as an unapproved material that we have denied before, and the light pattern of the windows. And I really would like to know what you guys think.
You know, I don't want to cross the line into designing it from here, but putting a casement in the center and flanking it with the picture windows is, when it could have just been one side. I mean, you know, there are so many things that could have been more consistent.
Let's go back to those casement windows, the spec sheet for a quick sec, please.
Thanks for pulling up Google Earth.
Yeah. And I'm sorry there's so much discussion here, but windows are always such a
Yes.
big deal with us, and very specific in the design guidelines. And I know it's really hard for you to be here as we talk about something where you've got the project kind of on its way already.
Is this a sash only too, since it's brick? There's nothing else, is there, just sash?
I don't see how it possibly could be sash only with the change to casement and
That's what I
everything
wondered.
like that.
So it'd be everything,
Just everything.
it's everything.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that would be a clarification he would have to make,
I
but
just felt like we would need to know to clarify.
Yeah, they're just being replaced from the inside. Nothing's done to the exterior. No, it's only and they'll be put in from the inside.
It's just kind of odd, because I mean, I don't think it's a contributing structure. I mean, it's kind of odd that we have jurisdiction and our guidelines probably aren't particularly well suited, but at the end of the day, it's under our guidelines.
Well, we have
But-
vinyl on there as not approved for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Of
As
course,
to
it's
the-
not about this structure only, it's about
Yeah.
the paper wood. It's
As
about,
to the jurisdiction, we didn't get it on for today, but we are gonna apply to get out of the historic district next month, just because we're on Reed Street with the other apartments and we don't really fit any of the Caplewood. Those are how homes are from the 20s and 30s. Ours was in late 40s. It's so we were gonna apply for that, but next month. That's weren't on the ballot today or.
Right. It's not something that we think of
Yeah.
we should be considering now.
Yeah, not to.
That's something that would come back before us, though?
It would.
Yes, we.
It would.
And is that application in yet?
But the actual plat is probably Caplewood. Like the actual the address is Reed Street.
I pulled up.
It
Well-
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing. Regardless,
Tear it down and then build a house that would be technically in Caplewood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where boundaries are Caplewood.
Yeah.
right. So
Oh,
right, we've had a lot of discussion about Caplewood. It's been interesting. So, but however, currently, today, it is in the historic district and we're governed by design guidelines. So let's, excuse me, bring it back to that with the windows. And I am extremely sympathetic to your situation. I am. I have trouble with vinyl, and we have turned down vinyl in the past. And that's where I am, regardless of light pattern, regardless of casement windows, we come down to vinyl. And we just have not approved that. And in fact, it's not that we haven't approved it, we have actively denied it. And that's the peg I'm hanging my hat on with this one. And I'd like to hear what the rest of you think.
I have a question for staff, primarily legal. Going down this path, do we need to start, I mean, should we come to a denial? Do we need to state reasons?
If the commission were to vote to deny the application, then the commissioners voting in opposition to it should state their reasons for their opposition to the application. And I would remind the commission that under the commission's rules, it requires the concurring votes of at least 5 members to approve an application. So any application that receives less than five affirmative votes would fail.
Got it. All right, folks, what do we think as we move this along?
I just simply can't get there. Motion to deny.
So I have a motion to deny the application as presented this evening. Is there a second? And we have a second. Yes, thank you. And, Mr. Blake, let me just say this before we sort of move on with this. We're certainly sympathetic to the situation, and you're in a very difficult position today with this. We're going to move ahead unless there's further discussion with our vote, and then we'll have a little conversation about this. So the motion is to deny the application as presented this evening. So if you say yes, you are voting to deny the application, which means we don't state a reason in what you just said.
If you're voting in favor of a motion to deny the application, then
Then
please
state the
do
reason.
state your reasons
Okay,
for.
got it. I thought that we would probably want to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, any further discussion? All right, so the motion is to deny the application as presented this evening. We've had a second. Let us vote. So the vote is a yes is denying the application. And you state a reason.
Yes, because of the light pattern, more so than the actual materials.
Okay. Mr. Cox?
Yes, we don't approve vinyl siding, vinyl windows, vinyl doors in the historic district.
Yes, design guidelines.
Yes, because vinyl is in opposition to the design guidelines, unapproved material.
Yes, for a combination of the light pattern and the material.
Yes, due to the inappropriate material.
Yes, due to the guidelines.
Yes, because of the guidelines.
So, Mr. Blake, I know it's hard news, especially when you've waited so long to get these windows, and it's unfortunate. It's just really hard for us, and we are really sympathetic to your situation. But the design guidelines are pretty clear in this situation, and we have denied vinyl. So you can talk to city staff about how various ways to move forward with this, and we do wish you luck with the project.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Mr. He's been very helpful, Mr. Bowman. This is what I expected because he told me y'all never approve vinyl. I was just giving it a shot, but
Well,
it's not thank y'all.
Well, good for you. And we enjoyed meeting you. And anyway, with however your project proceeds, good luck with that, and we may see you again.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Next case is HPC 2822, Nathan Lowen and Case Simmons petition for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of an accessory structure on the property located at 1713 7th Street. This is in the Druid City Historic District in Council District 4. The zoning for this property is R3. Here we have an aerial of the property as well as the surrounding properties. Here's a primary structure located on the property. And here's the adjacent eastern property. The proposal is to construct a 16 by 26 foot structure in the rear yard of the property. The structure will be composed of hardy board plank siding, black asphalt shingles, 4 double hung colonial style aluminum clad wood windows, as well as 2 wooden doors. So again, here is the primary structure on the property. And here we have the site plan as well as the elevation. So on the left, you can see the site plan. This structure will be located 5 feet away from any property lines. And on the right side of the screen is the elevations for the structure. Materials are hardy board plank siding, black asphalt shingles, 4 cellular PVC. Earlier I said aluminum clad. They are cellular PVC double hung windows, as well as 2 wooden doors. So here we have material spec sheets for the siding, as well as the doors and trim. And here are the spec sheet for the cellular PVC windows and shutters as well. Here are our applicable design guidelines. We did not receive any public comment for this case. The petitioner is here in person.
Are the windows an approved material?
Yeah, it was cellular PVC. We've approved that. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Can we go back just really quickly to the elevation?
Sure.
So we have a west elevation and a west elevation alternate, right? Two options.
I believe so, and I believe the petitioner can speak.
Okay. We'll get there. Thank you. Any questions for city staff?
I think there was a letter supporting it. An email?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, we did
Yeah,
receive
Date and Hale.
two public
Yeah.
letters,
Yep,
or two
that's right.
letters. in
Yep, there were two
support.
of them.
Yes,
Right.
that's correct.
Yep, thank you. All right, so, thank you, Mr. Bowen. Let me invite the applicant to step up to the podium. And would you mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
Yeah, I'm Nathan Lowen. I'm a resident at 1713 7th Street. And my spouse, Catherine Simmons, is not here today.
Thank you. What else can you tell us about your project? So we've got these two west elevations.
Right. And those are, the two elevations were to show the shutters, but those are not how the shutters should look. Those are not architecturally consistent shutters, but that was the point of, that's where the shutters would go, just to block the western sun in the evening and make the attic area a little less heated. That's it.
So do they open?
Yeah, I will have opening, if we do have shutters, the ones that were shown in the spec sheet, they would be opening shutters. It would not be shuttered closed,
Oh, I see.
if you know what I'm saying.
Is there, I'm just wondering, I don't know, Mr. Morris, do you have any questions about that? If the shutters are open.
Can we see the spec sheet, please?
I should have shown the elevation with the shutters open, I guess. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering how the shutters fit in there, that's all. It doesn't look like there's enough room on the sides.
Well, that's a good question. I haven't planned that out yet. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, that was just it's just the only question, because I wondered if, when I saw the alternate,
Yeah.
I wondered if you were having either the window flavor or shutters kind of, making it look like there's a window there, but it's actually shuttered. But these are going to be shutters that open.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's something
Okay,
I need to
it's all right.
figure out.
And
Yeah,
what-
or I'll have to do blinds on the inside if that's not.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Yeah, it doesn't look like they fold. That's a,
I mean, typically, your shutter wants to be one half the width of the opening, and these are 12-inch, so that would lead me to believe that it would be one 24-inch window.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the elevation?
So you are correct, Mr. Morris. I would have 4 of those, and they would go to the side, but I don't even think I've got enough room on the top there for 12 inches. From the
just doesn't look
corner
like
of the
there's enough
window to
room.
the-
Yeah.
Do you see that? So interesting observation. Anyway, we'll toss it around a little bit.
It says garden shed. Is this heated and cooled, or it looks like there's steps upstairs too?
It is not planned to be heated and cooled, but I will have electricity in there. The service pole is actually 10 feet away from that structure, so what I'd like to do is bring the electrical service over there and then go underground, because currently the main service wire is, I can literally touch it from my
Okay.
back porch. So
Sounds
that's part
good.
of my plan.
Can we go back to the front elevation, please?
Are there any other questions for Dr. Lowen? Well, thank you. Have a seat, and we may bring you back to the podium should other things arise. So we've had 2 submitted public comments in support of the application. Anything specific that they've cited?
Generally, they were just in support of Mr. Lowen's work at his house, so they supported the accessory structure.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to the application? Hearing none, let me close the floor to public comment and get discussion going with commission members. The only thing I found kind of weird were those shutters that I don't know where they go when they open. It just doesn't seem like a lot of room there.
Can we go back to the elevation? I just think that if the petitioner were so inclined to get the proportion of the shutters to where it's one half of the window width, just like the main structure on that upper,
Mm-hmm.
then I take no issue.
Right. I just don't know how they're going to do that with the way this is right now. However, it's a small detail.
Can y'all tell what the height is?
It says
I don't know if it's my
17.6.
eyesight. Okay,
Yeah.
17.6. Thank you.
Yeah, 17 and change. So that's fine. Any other comments? All right. Do I have a motion? Or a second after the motion?
I'd move to approve as presented.
I have a motion to approve the application as presented.
Second.
Thank you. I have a second. Any further discussion? Excuse me. Motion is to approve the application as presented this evening. We will vote. Let's begin on my left, please.
Yes.
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 Dr. Lowen, your application has been approved. Good luck with your project. Should anything change, including the shutters, please see city staff just to make sure it's cleared. All right. And good luck.
Next case is HPC 2922, Julian David Jenkins, petition for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of an accessory structure on the property located at 1210 Oakwood Avenue. This is in the Oakwood Court Historic District in Council District 4. Here we have an image of the zoning, zone R3. Here's an aerial of the property as well as the surrounding properties. Here we have an image of the primary structure on the property. This is the adjacent northern property. And the adjacent southern property. And here's the adjacent eastern property. The proposal is to construct a separate two-vehicle enclosed garage structure with storage space and a covered patio. So again, here's the primary structure on the property. And here are elevations as to what the accessory structure might look like or would look like. You see the two-car garage located on the ground floor. There's also some storage on top where you can see the window on the top right of the screen in front of you. There's also an outdoor seating area.
So with that outdoor sitting area, we see windows, we can see inside the garage. What is that item right above the window?
The square that's right above the window, I believe that is a TV or would be an entertainment sort of area. We do have the petitions over Zoom that can answer that question.
Yes, there would be a TV.
Thank you.
So here is the current land survey of what is there on the property today. They have submitted an expedited review to have the existing driveway be replaced, as well as those brick planters that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, as well as the shed to be removed.
And if you can
Sure, yeah,
highlight
sorry.
some stuff, that would be great.
So this brick planter
Mhm.
here, shed here.
Yep.
And here is the proposed site plan. The structure does look large. They are going to the zoning board of adjustment as well to request variances for ground coverage ratio, as well as setbacks, because as it is proposed, it would encroach that 5 feet boundary of the property line. So those items will be discussed at the next zoning board of adjustment meeting.
Okay, and just to be clear, square footage of this kind of thing does not fall under our purview.
Correct.
We look at the design guidelines. And then can you tell us from here which way this is oriented again? Like, show us where the patio is, just kind of quickly highlight that so we can get oriented back.
Right. I may have to ask the petitioner to specify that.
Okay. So the driveway, you would basically visually see the garage door, and the patio, the covered patio would be off to the opposite side.
Ms. Jenkins, we'll continue the presentation and then we'll have you answer questions at the.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here are some more elevations of the interior of the structure. You can see the two-car garage below, as well as the seating area, and then the storage area in the bottom right-hand corner. Storage area. Here are the proposed elevations. The height of the structure is 18 foot. The ZBA request, like I mentioned earlier, is the variance for setback and ground coverage ratio. So the setback to be less than 5 feet from the rear property line, and ground coverage ratio to be over 35%.
What is the ground cover ratio as proposed, just out of curiosity?
I don't have that information, but
It's all right, thank you.
here we have the building materials. So it's hardy plank siding for the exterior siding. The garage door is an aluminum frame door. The patio door is a clad wood door as well. The windows are aluminum clad wood windows. We also have pictures of the materials. I did want to note the patio window is proposed to be an aluminum double pane bifold window. We also have a closer up of that on a later slide. Here's the siding. This is for the garage door. Here we have the clad wood windows as well as the shingles. And this is the patio aluminum bifold window. Here are our applicable design guidelines.
And as we look at accessory structures and we talk about them complementing the main structure in terms of materials, What do we have with the main structure and materials?
The materials do match those of the primary structure.
Any questions for city staff? Well, thank you very much. All right, let's invite the applicant into the hearing, please. And if you could state your name and your address, please, for the record.
Julie Jenkins, 1210 Oakwood Avenue.
So, Ms. Jenkins, can you tell us a little bit more about your application?
The intention is basically to get some place to store some tools, and we have some concerns with the existing narrow driveway, and I have boys with big trucks and lifted trucks and wide wheels. And I think further down, you'll see that the driveway is also busted up. The planter boxes no longer have any trees or plants, but encroach into the side. And there's also the main AC for the entire house is encroaching on the driveway. So it's feeling like it's not a question of if, but when it's going to get hit. That's a concern. And then the existing shed is horrible, unsightly. And so we're looking for something that, one, we can use to entertain, but then basically have a spot to park our vehicles. And there's a motorcycle and some other things. So we just have no storage.
Where's the AC unit you mentioned?
Go to the new site plan. Yeah.
Further down. Right there is the example, but there's also a photo where you can see that it actually is on the existing driveway, and the, what is that called? The drip.
Are
The
we,
concrete line basically is directly on there at all times.
is the AC unit going to stay where it is?
It has to. It's cost prohibitive to move it.
Sounds good.
And the other small dot you see is the AC system that services the upstairs. So there's two AC components here.
Thank you for clarifying that. Excuse me. Are there any questions for Ms. Jenkins? Well, we'll put you on hold for the moment, and we may bring you back into the discussion if a question arises. So, public comment, have we had any submitted in support of or opposition to? All right, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in support of or opposition to this application? Hearing none, I'll close the floor to public comment, and let's begin discussion by the commission members.
Could we go back to the guidelines?
So again, these are the ones that I'll have to read off.
Well, I think on the bottom, I guess that's not I mean, it is a pavilion, I don't know. I was just gonna look at the appropriate scale and proportion to the structure, but somebody mentioned earlier that we don't take part of that into, but I think mass we can take into.
We can look at appropriate scale.
Yeah,
It's
it
just,
just seems a little large to me. It seems like it's the same size as the structure. I know that on Oakwood Avenue, the second house on the left that is facing Oakwood is the only, besides the next door neighbor, is the only one that has a similar little back, but it's relatively similar to the actual structure and small. But
Do we have a picture to kind of look at the height and the mass of the front of the house? Either in the picture or in the, it's been a long day.
I will say on Oakwood Court, there are two accessory structures. I think if you come in, the second one on the right has a back house.
So that's that, but we don't have one in comparison to the house, to the main structure.
we don't have the height of the main structure, do we? Ms. Jenkins, you don't happen to know the height of the house? Do you offhand?
We know it's between 22 and 24.
All right, thank you. That's helpful.
I will say that, kind of like we were talking about the other accessory structure, the only thing you would really probably be able to see is the garage
Correct.
house set up, because there's a brick wall on the right side that has that back house. It has a back garage as well, the one on the corner, but it relatively matches, almost identical to the structure.
I mean, just looking at the front elevation of the house, and looking at these elevations, the massing appears to be fairly similar with that upstairs. I hate to use the word dormer, but it because it's more than that. But anyway, it's very similar to the upstairs dormer on the main structure.
Well, and one thing too, just going back to the site plan where we see this large rectangle there in the backyard, right? It looks really big, and that may be a concern, but the thing is, there's a covered patio as part of that. So the actual, I'm gonna call it the garage in quotation marks, is just part of that. And then we have a covered, open, seated area, which to me sort of changes that size consideration. If it were a big, block of a building where the whole thing was, had siding around it or whatever it was, would be a much different kind of feel than a structure that also had the covered.
Can we look at the
patio.
adjacent northern structure?
It's a little.
I mean,
bedroom, yeah.
that carport and storage area, you can't tell it in this picture, but you can tell it in Google Street Views. That is a large footprint
Yeah,
of a building.
it's big. And you can see, you can see this structure a whole lot more than you could see next door, because next door has a brick wall in between this house. So literally all you would see is really the garage portion.
I think the garage door is interesting because, it's probably not that consistent with this structure as it originally existed, but it looks like it's gone through a renovation, and so now it is consistent with what this structure has become, likely due to, fixing it up and putting some love into it. So it's an odd situation where if this was still that little cottage, I think I might have a significant problem with the garage door, but I think you just got to look at it in context of the whole house.
Yeah, it does have more of like a modern historic feel.
Right,
I guess.
and we approved that a number of years ago when I was on the commission with that sort of modern industrial cottage feel, I think. So the materials in this proposal match what we see going on with the main structure.
I just think it's important to kind of tease out that, especially with the institutional memory, is the history there.
Absolutely.
You couldn't, this isn't an apples for apples comparison. You look back at what was approved 10 years ago or whatever, and it was probably overall approved by the council as part of a whole project with this house, and it's good for the neighborhood and everything. And now we end up with a situation where this garage door makes sense, to my eye.
Thank you. Other comments? Other motions?
I have a question for staff.
I do.
As far as a motion, would it need to qualify with the ZBA requirements, or would that just go through its own motion or wheels of progress without our having to qualify?
There would not need to be any special motion to accommodate that. If the certificate of appropriateness is approved by this commission, it's still subject to the ZBA requirements and the ZBA granting its approval. This commission doesn't have any authority to supersede into the ZBA's jurisdiction, if that makes sense.
And it's always good to reiterate that.
My question is related, and our guidelines do specify a 5-foot setback, which is not being met by the plans here. And so I don't get the order of proceeding. ZBA first and then us, or us and then ZBA?
As I understand the ZBA application, I would ask the planning staff to correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going to ZBA for 2 variances. One is on the 5-foot setback, and the other is on the
Percentage coverage.
So the 5 foot setback variance will be addressed by the ZBA petition.
But it's in our purview as well. If It's in
is.
the design
It
guidelines.
is in our
Because that was the two
guidelines.
things that were in the other two accessories.
But I guess an approval as presented would be understanding that.
Understanding
Or-
which
or-
part of it.
or-
'Cause-
or allowing it,
Well, I
you
think
know.
Dr. Davis brought up a really interesting point. I hadn't thought of it the way you presented it just now. But as we talk about our design guidelines and we look at things, we say 5 foot,
That's
right?
right. And
I
this
mean, that's
is
there.
3
It's
feet
an
and a little.
absolute, correct?
It is in the design. It is in the design guidelines. Yes,
Is
ma'am.
it an absolute in the design guidelines? It says 5 feet.
Yeah.
Yes, the standard in the design guidelines for detached garages or carports is to locate the garage to the rear of the main structure and set back at least 5 feet from the side yard property line. That's
Right.
And like I say, that is the same setback that they will be addressing with the ZBA.
ZBA allows a variance. We do or do not? I'm just wondering, is it a must, is
So
it
this is
should?
it's not a variance for you guys, it's just you're acknowledging that they're not meeting that, just like maybe the light pattern's changing a little bit, but you're acknowledging that you're okay with it,
Okay,
with your approval.
that was a really interesting point.
I believe contextually in this area, there's sufficient evidence of structures closer than that.
Oh, yeah,
in
no,
this
I don't
area
have I don't have a
that
problem
makes it
necessarily with that.
acceptable,
What I have
should
a-
they be able to clear the other
Yeah,
bar.
what I'm interested in is what Dr. Davis had said, that we have our guidelines that say this. You got to have this. And then the variance is going to ZBA. And so how do we navigate that, right? Whose guideline, with our guidelines, right?
Right.
So yeah, I understand your point, Mr. Morris, and just philosophically, I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, I think our guidelines are an attempt to describe in more detail than the Alabama Code sets forth what, generally speaking, we find appropriate. And, one thing that's specified in the guidelines is typically things are in the back. Typically, they're not such and such distance from the marker. But, as Mr. Pond says, we approve things that vary slightly from historical norms or from the guidelines themselves.
And again, just to get to the question that I think the chair was asking, from my view, the answer to the question is that with respect to the setback, the side yard setback issue, it's still subject to the ZBA approval, and so the HPC would be deferring to the ZBA as to whether to grant that variance on that 5 foot setback. That's the way that I would view it if the HPC does approve. the
Right. And
certificate.
don't misunderstand as I'm talking about this. I'm not saying to deny this or change this in this particular case. That's not that the issue is not that. It's that, it's our guidelines say one thing, ZBA says something else. So we are if we approve this, we are going outside of the design guidelines, right? We're allowing an exception to the design guidelines.
No, ma'am, that's what I'm saying. I don't think you would be going outside of the design guidelines because the standard is the same between the HPC's design guidelines and the zoning code with respect to that 5 foot setback. The petitioner still has to go to ZBA to get approval and get a variance on that 5 foot setback. In my view, what the HPC would be doing, because the HPC does not have a variance mechanism in the same way that the ZBA does. So if the HPC were to approve it tonight, what you would be doing, in my view, would be deferring to the ZBA as to whether to grant that variance. If they chose to grant it, then they would have a certificate of appropriateness that allows them to proceed with their project. And I think that's probably the best way that I can answer the question.
I don't know that the ZBA and the HPC consider the same thing. I mean, the HPC is concerned with whether this is an appropriateness issue, neighborhood harmony, that sort of thing. I mean, the the ZBA has, they're considering hardship factors and all this other type of stuff. So I don't know. To me, it's a question of whether being that close to the side yard makes this structure inappropriate.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's the enclosed portion of the garage that's violating the setback on the right. I would think differently about it if it were the open part. I understand that they want the cars to go straight into the garage from the driveway. But still, that's where, to me, the violation is.
Well, and don't misunderstand, I'm not suggesting we turn this down for this. It's just that our design guidelines state certain things, and I was just interesting thought about this issue with that and the ZBA's role in this as well, because there are two different things going on here. And so, with that, what do we think?
Motion to approve is presented.
Have a motion to approve as presented?
Just out of interest, I think we asked about the last structure, whether we were just interested whether it was a heated and cooled space. Is this a heated and cooled space? I was just interested whether this is a controlled space.
Am I supposed to answer?
Yes, yes, Ms. Jenkins, please. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, this will be.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, that's great. All right, so we have a motion to approve the application as presented this evening. I have silence. What are some of the concerns that you guys have? Let's kind of bring that out into discussion. Mr. Clark?
I just have a hard time if our design guidelines specify a certain boundary, how we just denied someone for design guidelines. That's my issue.
Well, and it's really multiple. You have the ground covering ratio, and I understand your thing about having the open patio included in that, whether it should be or not. But according to the actual thing, we're would be bending on 2 with the ground cover.
We don't have. It's not us. That 35% is not us.
Yeah,
I know, but we've talked about it before, and we've used it before in our research.
With
Can we go back to the
some
design
other
guidelines?
Well, I think
real
we talked about
quick?
proportionality. of the
Proportionality
structures is what we can
with-
talk about. I think
and
that's
with
what
We're
you're
gonna
Carports,
referring to.
get
yes.
proportionality is our correct and like fit in of the neighborhood is our
Right,
correct guideline, I think.
right.
But it's basically the same thing, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, except in addition to ground covering, we would also be looking at the height of the structure and the effect, if any, it has in detracting from the main historical contributing residence and any of the other structures around or the neighborhood. And I don't know, did we decide whether it's shorter than the main structure? Do we know for sure?
It is.
It is?
I think a few feet.
A few
I think
feet,
they said
yeah.
22 and this is 17.6.
Yep, something like that. Between 22 and 24 for the main structure. So remember, this ground cover ratio of an accessory structure is not us. We've talked about it in terms of parking areas and other things, but we don't talk about it with an accessory structure. That's ZBA, correct? So we take that part off the table. Where we may find it to be proportionately inappropriate is in our guidelines. There was that statement, I can't remember, I can't quote it, but there's being compatible in, I'm just going to wing it here.
The site plan.
Is it massing? Is that the word?
Not quite, because massing sort of considers everything in an area. But more of a proportion of this, is it appropriate with the main structure, with what we have going on here? That, I mean, it's a really valid question.
I'll make the motion to approve as presented with a 5-foot setback to follow the design guidelines.
How does that work for you, city staff? It does change the plan, right? But our design guidelines have that, and if commission members want to follow the design guidelines,
There's a lot of room in the building. It could be shortened somewhat to meet that 2-foot requirement, to add on to the 3 feet.
Would the applicant have to request this change?
this is
I think they'd have to
I think-
approve, and they'd have to agree to the amendment similar to the brick on the accessory structure at 30 Autobahn.
I was just going to point out in response to, I believe, Mr. McGiffort's question, that under the design guidelines in the city code, and this is in Article 4, Section 8, determinations by the commission. This is the provision on approvals. There is provision in the design guidelines that the commission may approve an application subject to specifically stated conditions.
very helpful, thank you.
I mean, it looks like there's room to slide it a little bit. And then I think you could add a little extra driveway to center the car up.
The dimensions are 3 foot 2.5 inches right here, and then 6 foot 8 6 foot 8 inches on the southern side.
In the rear.
You said 3 feet, 2.5 inches.
So what are we, two?
So that
2
would
inches
be
long.
9.
1 foot 9.5.
1 foot 9.
Yeah, they're basically half a inch short, I think.
No, it's not half an inch. No.
5 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. The size of the structure as it is today would encroach, no matter if they shifted it.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, the size of the structure as they're presenting it today would encroach, no matter if they shifted it a little bit more to the south.
But if they moved it to 5 feet, what would be the difference that they need?
Then it would be like 4.5 on one side. I believe that's what the math comes out to.
Well, don't they just shorten the whole thing by,
Yeah.
2 feet?
That's an option as well.
Yeah, and just like lop it off.
It's a big structure.
Because I mean, they could on the
Mhm,
left side, it could slide from 6'8" to 5 feet, and then you could take a little bit off to fit 5'5". I mean, that's just if we're going specifically off the design guidelines, but they are guidelines.
Well, and we don't design them or tell them how they're going to do it. Do we, Mr. Hobbs, do we say, we don't have to tell them how to fix it. We can just say, we don't, we want that 5-foot setback, period. Approve it as, let's say, approve it as presented with the condition it has the 5-foot setback.
And then they wouldn't have to come back to us if we.
And
approve
then
with
they
conditions.
figure out how they're going to meet that 5-foot setback. Are they going to shorten the building a little bit, or does that affect the?
The only thing that I'm thinking through is if we start going down that route, then we end up in a place where we don't actually have a design footprint that is being approved by the HPC. Also, when are they going to ZBA? 28th. So that application would be, and they are required to present a footprint.
Okay,
for-
I'm having trouble hearing you guys. Can you
Yeah.
get
I'm
into the
sorry.
mic?
If the commission were to take that route on the application, then we would no longer have a good design footprint because the actual size of the structure would have to be redesigned because it doesn't appear that there is a way to site that particular
Okay.
structure in a way that meets the 5
Okay.
feet on both sides.
That's fair enough. So can it be is it option to be continued?
It could be continued if the petitioner, if the applicant would agree to a continuance.
All right, because the options are, and I don't know if Ms. Jenkins is listening to this, the options are, depending on where our discussion is going, is to continue it If we vote and we end up denying it, she has to wait 6 months to come back, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, all right. So commission members, let's talk about this a little bit, and then we can bring Ms. Jenkins back in.
Can we go back to the design guidelines? Can we flush those up? Yeah, so it's appropriate scale and proportion. I can't remember a time, I think the footprint and the height of this structure are approximately the same as the house. There may be an addition off the back that makes the house a little larger, but I don't recall a time that we've approved an accessory structure that was that high of a ratio, both in height and coverage to the main historical structure.
And let's be sure we're not talking about the that size of the footprint, the ratio of the footprint, because that is not us. Bring it back to proportionality with the main structure.
Proportional and
Yes.
To the main structure.
Yes.
So, the only way I can talk about proportion is to talk about height and width.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So we're not talking about ground coverage. We're talking about height.
Right. Correct. Correct. And I just want to make sure that we stay really precise on that. Thank you. Other thoughts on this? So one issue is the 5-foot setback. Another issue that I hear coming up, it's come up in a number of different ways, is the size of this thing as it relates to the main structure. Right, so the proportion of that.
Can we scroll down a little bit on the guidelines? I mean, it does say it twice. It says it under garages, and then it says under pergolas, pavilions, and storage sheds as well.
Which part? The 5 feet? The 5 feet issue? Yeah. Yep.
And maintaining appropriate scale and proportion.
Yep. Yes, and that's the issue there, right? Appropriate scale and
So-
proportion.
If you're reading the design guidelines and you have a setback of at least 5 feet, I didn't see where an AC unit would go. Would the AC unit be allowed to go inside that 5 feet, or would it have to be even move farther to fit something like that? I don't think they're going to, I don't know if I would put it right in the front where it's open. I would think they would put it on the side or the rear.
I don't know.
Because that would add more of them having to shift and make it smaller.
I don't know if there is an AC unit on just the ones that I was asking about are the two for the main
For
house.
the house,
and the
yeah.
driveway.
I can answer that in non-historic districts, we locate AC units in setbacks all the time.
Oh, okay. But what about in a historic district?
I don't know.
So I think one thing was to
The
ask.
answer is there is no clarification for that
Okay.
because it's not.
One question, I guess, was to the petitioner, do they have any interest in addressing some of the discussion here and potentially coming back on a continuance, or do they want to vote, I guess would be.
Well, so let's get a feel for the room here a little bit, because it sounds to me as though the commission has found a number of issues with this application that are problematic. All right, so then we can bring Ms. Jenkins back into the room. Ms. Jenkins, you're still muted, so hang on a second before you speak. But let me just sort of summarize a bit of what's been going on here. I know you've been listening to this. So there have been a number of issues that we have with the application based on the design guidelines. The options that applicants have with this, and we want to talk to you about this, is that if we went ahead and voted on your application as presented this evening, should it be turned down, you can't come back to us for another 6 months. However, if you want to reconsider your project based on the discussion we've had this evening, you can request that we continue it until next month. And then you can come back to us with something appropriate based on what we've been talking about this evening. And can we unmute Ms. Jenkins, please? There we go. All right, you can speak.
Okay, I guess I would like to ask a few questions before answering, if I can do so as well. Okay. I think my concern, and I want to address the concerns that are being expressed here as well. I think the part that we struggled with is the home was built in 1920s and the lot width. Yes, this is zoned R3. And it's my understanding that R3s are now supposed to have a minimum lot width of 65 feet. And I have 50 and 57. So this 5-foot setback on both sides does create somewhat of a hardship to actually have usable space on the existing lot. And I think we have, you're looking at you're saying nothing to the ground coverage percentage, but that's also factored on a minimum of 7,500 square feet. We don't have that because of the lot size. I think the other concern is we did go with this particular structure and this particular design for the ability to drive straight in with the vehicles that we do have. But in addition, if you would look at slide number 15 that you shared, this is in harmony with other structures that are adjacent to this property. Literally, my neighbor, his garage is right on top of the property line. The neighbor next to that has another carriage house behind it, right on the property line. It's not a 5-foot setback. The property, again, to the opposite side, his is immediately on the property line. So I'm struggling a little that it's in harmony with what all these other buildings in this particular Oakwood Historic District have worked with or used, but you can literally see these other structures sitting right on those lines. And I guess that's part of my challenge, is trying to use what lot I have and the ability to work within the guidelines. We are asking for a variance on the right-hand side. The back meets the criteria, but it's just the straight up in from the driveway. That's kind of where I think I'm trying to go. I was taking into consideration the size in proportion to the home, because I was also advised on that when we were designing the structure. That's what I think that's what I wanted to share and make sure that I was addressing. Do you have any? That's it?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Really appreciate you bringing up those points. And we can really appreciate sort of the issues that you come up with in these older neighborhoods. So thank you for that. Commission members, we've had a little bit more input from the applicant.
I mean, I think she convinced me. I mean, if you look at all of them, they're on the lot lines. And so I think while it says 5 feet, I think that if we're also talking about the proportion of the neighborhood, they're all pretty similar.
But I think we would be asking the same questions if they came wanting to build something and they
and
were
these were
trying to
done
build right
along-
on the line.
yeah.
I think
I think these were
these
built
aren't
before
in front of
HPC
us
was a
right
thing,
now.
yeah.
So that's my
Well, that's part of it.
concern.
The thing is too, I think, let me ask city staff a quick question here. When we look at these lot lines as they're drawn on this, are they absolutely accurate? Or are they just kind of like sort of here?
I mean, they're a little
They're a little off.
You
So
can
we want
look
to,
at
yes.
16.
So we want to be really careful when we're looking at some of these lot lines and making big determinations, right? But we do have, what I thought was an interesting point was, talking about the width of her lot and how that changed a little bit. And do I understand correctly that the issue of the setback is on one side?
Yes. the right
Okay,
side, the driveway
just want to just make
side.
sure that I was clear on that one. So we've got, you know, this application is such an interesting one because we do have that issue. We have, you can see how the lot line kind of angles off a little bit there on the upper edge, right? Height-wise, it's not, it's fits in with what we already approved else at other times.
I mean, I
You know?
assume the lot is as it was originally platted, probably for this neighborhood, and this is probably the original structure. The structure was built according to the size of the lot. Lots were built according to, you know, the overall design of the neighborhood. So, you know, it is what it is. I think my larger concern is we have these sort of bungalows in Oakwood, and we're talking about an accessory structure being something that, you know, serves in some way the larger structure. But here we're talking about building something that's about the same scale and proportion as, you know, the main structure that we're tasked with being concerned about.
I would point out too that the offending garage that's actually on Oakwood Court, not Oakwood Avenue, but is adjacent to this property, was built before the Historic Commission came into being.
And that's always an issue when we look at some of these things, when we see something that's a bit odd or different, is that the historic districts weren't established,
in effect.
you know, way back then. And some things that we do see sometimes with windows, in fact, were done before the HPC was established. And so it's not a precedent set or anything like that. Thing is, with the size of the structure, when we look at it like this, it looks like a big mass of something. To me, we've got the garage part, the storage part as a chunk, as one part of the chunk, but a big part of that chunk is that open seated area. You know, what I'm doing is I'm visualizing it, taking off that sitting area and looking at the garage storage area as a unit, because the covered patio doesn't bother me that much. And when I think of it in those terms, the size of the garage in proportion to the house does not bother me. It's a complicated application this evening. What are any other thoughts on this one? All right, let me ask you guys straight up. Let's move this along. I get this sense that we have a number of commission members who are not fully on board with this application. Would that be all right? Because what I would like to be able to do, Mr. Hobbs, is if we allow the applicant a continuance of this, the applicant needs a bit of guidance, right? Like where do we state on the record where we have issues without, you know, voting yes, voting no? How do we provide feedback? I don't want her just hanging out there without really understanding what's happening.
I'm not sure how to provide any, there would have to be some clear consensus and direction from the commission, and they're going to need that because if they're also going to need that in order to go to ZBA with,
Right.
with
Well,
whatever
and then
direction they need to take there.
And consensus, I'm not sure what that means in this case. We're not going to have, we're not going to be unanimous on something, on some of the ideas here. We've got some issues about the size, the proportion of this as it relates to the main structure. That's come up. we've had the setback come up, but I can't say that any one of us would agree, we have a critical mass of people here who agree, yes and yes, that these are both problems. Or that, some of us may not think that either of them are a problem either. So how do we untie this knot?
I'm not sure that I have a good answer because I'm not sure of what the sense of the commission, I'm not sure that I can say what the sense of the commission is with respect to the specific issues that the commission would like to see addressed.
Can we do in a way, a sort of like a straw poll of commission members to get their thoughts?
The floor is open for discussion and comment from any commissioners who would like to speak and share their thoughts. And there's also, I still have in my notes, there is still a motion from Mr. Morris to approve the application as presented that is still pending.
Correct. Right. And then we kind of got into a discussion here. All right. So we've got Mr. Morris's motion hanging there. Would you mind, I mean, we've made comments, so it's already out there, public comments. Would you mind if we just went down the row and just state what your thoughts are? Keep it simple, sort of where you land in this so that we can figure out how to move forward. Does that sound like a good plan, Ms. Harmer-Young?
I think my concern is this is an accessory structure. It's not the main structure. And I understand your view that trying to block off the open air part, but it still seems overpowering. Looking from the Google Street View, I do think it'll be seen more just because the neighbor accessory structure is not as long, as tall. And I'm concerned just about the massing of it overall, whether it's the height and I'm not as concerned about the 2 feet. I understand being able to have parking that, is secure, that is covered, that kind of thing. I'm not as concerned of being able to drive straight in. I think she made some, comments about that hardship that we can all at least, understand where she's coming from, whether we agree with it or not. I'm more concerned about the height, scale, width, massing of the property overall.
Okay, so you have a problem with the height of the building and the overall size of it. Okay, setback's not an issue with you right now, but just it's the size of this thing. All right, Mr. Cox.
Yeah, largely the same. I'm concerned about the scale and proportionality, and looking from the street view, I think you're going to see a lot of it. So it's both a concern about how it fits into the neighborhood and the whole sort of streetscape, as well as to the extent that it detracts from sort of the feature on the property that we're concerned about, which is the original, the original cottage. So I don't. For me, it's not appropriate in the sense that I think
it's too big.
It detracts.
It's just. I mean, simply put, too big. All right.
Same. I agree.
All right, too big. I'm waffling on the size thing. I could live with it. Initially, I found it rather large. I don't have the same issue with the setback after listening to the applicant address that on that one side. I'm okay with it. I don't have the same level of concern with the height. It is rather large, all right? So there's that. Mr. Morris?
I mean, based on the discussion about the coverage and the setback, I can't seem to rectify where that's, I mean, they have to clear the bar with ZBA, and their decision on that would have the precedent based on those requirements. Our guidelines are written essentially to reiterate or to complement those. So essentially, they're being held to the standard twice. Her discussion about context and all of the other structures and the lot sizes and all of those kinds of things, those are the pleas she's going to have to make to them. So essentially, as far as if there's any issue that I could take whatsoever with this, it would have to do with the second story and the height. I still don't believe that it's taller than the primary structure. So if there's anything that I would see that was of any issue, it would be that second story.
Okay, but it's not a really strong issue with you. And with the evidence presented, we know it's not taller than the main structure. So we know that. Okay, so basically, if ZBA is okay with the stuff, you're okay with the stuff. Through the design guidelines, you're all right with this. All right, Mr. Clark.
What Mr. Cox was saying is it's simply too large.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Nelson.
I think it's the same thing everybody else reiterated. It's the scale, and even, I wish I could see it in relation to the cottage in front. I wish I had that spec drawing, or whatever, so I could tell it, because that's the part that worries me. I have a little bit with the setback. I can get around it, but I don't know about the scale part. I have tried to focus on the fact that it's only the center part that's 2 stories, but I still can't tell without the front building.
And Dr. Davis.
I still have a setback, a problem with the setback. If we approve it going against our guidelines, we sort of give ZBA reason to approve it as well. I don't want to do that. I think a minor adjustment could fix it. I also worry a little bit about the second floor and how it is viewed not just from Oakwood Avenue, but from the street behind, 17th Avenue, I think it is, that you can see right through. And I think it's going to look low and somewhat out of scale.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've polled the commission members, and the overall sentiment is that it is rather large, right? We have a problem with it. I'm just going to simply put the size of it, right? And part of that size thing is addressed with the setback issue as well, although, you know, maybe for some it's not as big an issue. So that's sort of like roughly where we stand on this. So Ms. Jenkins, if I can bring you back for a second.
I'm trying. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm here.
Great. So did you pick up on all of that? So where the commission stands on this without doing a formal motion and a vote, it appears that the commission members, for the most part, are not in support of this application, that the proposed structure is just too large. The issue of the setback has come up, but it's not as major an issue as the overall size of this. So the option, here's an option for you, and I know it's disappointing for you to hear this. You know, there's a lot of work that's been done already, put into these plans. But the options that you have are for us to go ahead with a vote on the application as presented, and we already have a good sense of where that will go. Should it be denied, you have to wait 6 months, according to the rules, to come back with a new proposal. 6 months. We can do a continuance now that we've provided some guidelines on where our thinking is on your application, and you can come back next month, or much sooner than 6 months, with a modification of this. But that has to be your decision.
I thought if we denied it, they could come back as long as they made changes. Since when did it become 6 months?
Is that
6
right?
months wait.
Yes, ma'am. It's six.
Oh.
The 6 months is to come back on the same application.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
All right, I'm sorry. I misspoke, Ms. Jenkins. And I've said this earlier. Why didn't you guys correct me sooner?
Well,
Anyway, all right. So the option is if we went through with a vote tonight and it was turned down, she comes back anyway. Correct? And the only thing is she pays the $50 again.
If she were to change the design, the applicant could come back without being subject to the six month bar. Applicant would also have the ability, if they didn't agree with the commission's decision, to appeal that decision.
Okay. Did you hear that part? It was kind of soft spoken, Ms. Jenkins.
Can you just repeat? I'm sorry.
So here we go. Let me sort of summarize this, and Mr. Hobbs, get ready to jump in on that mic. All right, so here we go. If your application, if we vote on it and it is denied this evening, you can come back next month with a new proposal. So there's not a 6-month wait. I misspoke. You would need to pay the fee again, another $50, to come back to us. All right, in a month. You also have the option to appeal our decision. I don't know that process. City staff can help you with that. All right. Or the option is to continue it and come back next month with a modified application. So what would you like to do? And do know we need 5 affirmative votes for an application to be approved.
I guess I'm just questioning if I were to show the dimension and the scale, is that going to help? And then, like, I don't know if we even got to slide number 35 in the presentation, which shows the driveway straight down where you would see what you would see of the building. I think all you would see is the driveway and the garage portion, because to your point, the leader of this meeting, building structure is a 30 by 20. That portion, the garage portion that you mentioned, the house itself, it doesn't show any dimensions. The house itself is 30.7 in width by 64 depth. So this is 30 by 20 versus the 30 by 64. So we're saying it's the same size as the house. It's not. So I'm again, what do we do to change the perception in scale for those on the commission, I guess, or committee, excuse me? I don't know. I mean, other than you want us to change the scope of the project, is that what I'm basically getting told, or that's my question?
Well, so just in looking at what the commission members were thinking in when we went down the row here, the general feeling by a number of the commission members is that this is just very large. I can't speak to more of that. It seems out of proportion as they talked about it with the main structure. They have the evidence, they have the packets, they've looked at all of this, we've heard the discussions, and this is how some commission members view the application. So we do have the option, if you feel strongly about this, not that I sort of am encouraging this is the route to go, but we could take the vote, it gets denied, and you can appeal it, right? That the applicant can appeal our decision by going to court. Is that correct?
All applicants do have the right to appeal a decision of the HPC if they are aggrieved by that decision. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So there's that option too. I just don't, here's where, as chair of the commission, I'm going to sort of try to be a neutral party in terms of talking about this application specifically. But you have presented the packet. The commission members have looked at the packet. They've had an opportunity to ask you questions, and you've brought more evidence into the conversation. And the commission as a whole finds the application's proposal rather large, out of scale with the existing residents. So I don't know that adding anything to it now is going to change that, because they've had a chance to think about this and ask questions and gather more information.
A continuance would also allow the luxury of ZBA having gone first and rendered an opinion and a ruling on the ground coverage and the setback.
That's correct. ZBA, the application is going to ZBA on the 28th of this month.
25th. We said
25th,
28th
excuse me.
originally, but it's the 25th.
Yeah, but even if we denied it, they can still go to ZBA, right? Or no?
No,
But
ma'am,
she
they
couldn't
would-
come back with this application.
She would
Oh,
not.
that's right,
She
that's
would
true.
not, she would, if it's denied by the commission,
Yeah.
she will not be able to take this site plan to the
Right.
ZBA.
Well, and here we are then in kind of a tricky situation because, does the applicant then continue with the hope that ZBA is going to approve these conditions so she can come back here with us, but we still have the same issue. We're talking with ZBA about the setback, which is kind of a minor issue-ish up here with us. But the height of this building is not going to be part of ZBA. We're talking about ground cover area. So if commission members still feel that this structure is too tall, too big, that's outside, I mean, partially related to square footage coverage, right? But there's a little bit more to it than that in our guidelines and how we see things. So I'm not sure if we're giving the applicant a kind of false hope here.
I mean, it almost just makes more sense to vote.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
The application of the materials are before us.
Certainly, the chairwoman could call for a vote.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it might be,
So what do we
Petitioner
do
does not
about-
express an interest in the continuance.
sorry, what was that?
And does that block me from going to ZPA?
She's going to ZBA with this site plan that wouldn't be approved by you guys. Therefore, there would be no point in getting approval from ZBA if she was to get approval from ZBA.
Did you catch that? Ms. Jenkins, did you hear what Mr. Pond said? So the application is, what happens with us is connected with what happens with ZBA.
Okay, I guess we'll just ask for the continuance.
Would you like the continuance?
We need to
Okay.
move for that?
I think we do a motion in that.
I need to rescind my motion.
Motion to continue.
Yeah, so let's do that. Gives you a chance to breathe a little bit, Ms. Jenkins, and then hopefully we'll see you next month. So the applicant has requested a continuance on this one, right? So we have a motion, yes, somewhere? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Very enthusiastic. Thank you. All right, so the motion is to continue this application. Let us vote on this one, beginning on my left.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
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 All right, Ms. Jenkins, your application is continued, and we look forward to seeing you as soon as possible. If you have any questions, of course, with all of this nuance and things, please see city staff, and they'll help walk you through all of this and work with you with ZBA as well.
Next case is HPC 3022, Steve and Wanda Muzan, petition for a certificate of appropriateness for exterior alterations to the primary structure at 2015 11th Street. This is in the Druid City Historic District and Council District 4. Here's the zoning of the property. It's currently zoned BGO. Here's an aerial overview of the property. Here we have an image of the primary structure at the property. This is the adjacent northern property. And the adjacent eastern property. And here we have the adjacent western property. The proposal is to replace all existing windows with solid cellular PVC windows. The petitioner proposes to use the exact case profiles on the house now. There will be a change from 7/8 inch muttons change from 1 1/4 inch muttons to 7/8 inch. And also the windows will go from 2/2 to 3/1. The petitioner will also propose to replace the existing asphalt shingle roof with a metal roof. So again, here's the primary structure on the property. Here we have the existing elevations. And the proposed elevations. As you can see, the change in window design, also the change in the doors, as well as the roof material. The materials are hardy board siding, metal roof, cellular PVC windows, and 2 wooden doors. Here are the material spec sheets. First, this is for the windows. Here's the spec sheet for the metal roof. Also for the cellular PVC windows. And here are the proposed doors, or selection of the proposed doors. The petitioner can speak to which door they are going with. And here are applicable design guidelines as it relates to the windows and doors and roof. We received no public comment for this application.
Thank you very much. Any questions for city staff? All right, thank you. Let me invite the applicant to come up to the podium, please. I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a sinus thing. I'm getting a little nasal. And if you please state your name and your address for the record, please.
Yeah, I'm Steve Muzan, and this is Wanda, and we're at 2015 11th Street, Tuscaloosa.
So, Mr. Muzan, you had a really interesting application because there were a lot of interesting narrative that you provided with the rationale for these changes. And I'm wondering if you can just, the big things are the roof. You can talk about the roof and talk about the change in the light pattern for the windows.
Yeah, what we did, the house has had what was the movie years ago? I never saw it, but a series of unfortunate events or something like that. I think was the name of it. Anyhow, when we first, we rented it for a while. I came here 4 years ago. I've been doing design review for the university for 20 years, but came here 4 years ago thinking it would be a very interim thing. And so we rented first at the tower and then rented this house. And it had been student rental for like a decade before us, and then ended up buying it a year and a half ago. But during those student rental years, it had, like I say, it had really got kind of, it was unfortunate, a lot of unfortunate things, and including the reclamation of the front, the left side of the front porch as a bathroom to make it a 3-bedroom through 3-bath for the students. And originally that was a porch all the way across, just like Kelly Fitz has the house next door, the White House that showed up in the photo, and they appeared to be pretty much, I think they were identical to begin with. And so you can see how many changes there were and so forth. And, but anyhow, yeah, the roofing, I suspect, we have no photos from, back in the 20s when it was built, but I suspect that there's a high chance that it was 5V roofing then, because it was very common roofing in the Deep South. And so really what we're doing is putting the original roof back on. And in the process of what we're doing, had an architect friend, Gary Justice from Birmingham, and he said, Steve, don't sanitize it too much. So, you need to leave some of the some of the history of the house, even though it's some unfortunate history, clean it up a little bit, but don't make it perfect. And I think he's right. And so that's kind of the approach that we're taking, of saying, what can we do to elevate it a bit, but not just make it textbook, which would look like it doesn't belong here anyway, because Tuscaloosa has calibrations, obviously, for it wouldn't be just straight up textbook styles and so forth. And so the going to the 3/1 as opposed to the 2/2, 2/2 is more just a simple vernacular farmhouse, whereas it with the bungalow, that's more typically a 3/1 or 4/1 is a typical light pattern there. And then also the 1.25 is kind of unusually chunky, whereas the 7/8 muntins are more appropriate. And so really and then there's the front porch columns, and I went over to Kelly's house next door, and
let's look at that house, the next door house, for a quick second. If you can just sort of follow the narrative here, we can just present the visuals.
Yeah,
wow,
this
that's
one.
interesting.
And so, and by the way, she said that, she said, Steve, if you do replace those windows, will you give me the old windows? Because I'd like to have them, because it's the same as what she has on this house. And so sure, we'll be happy to do that. And so, but anyhow, if you look at, if you look close at her porch, the porch beam, actually there's no expressed beam, it's just siding running across on both of them. But the beam and the pedestals actually don't line up right. You cannot make it right. If you have a pier under a porch, you can slide the column up far enough that you never want to come up to the point that the column base, if there is one, projects further than the pier. But you can come right up to the edge. But if you have an actual pedestal, like what these do, then the column should center on the pedestal both ways. But if you center it, there's no way it's going to hit the beam right. As a matter of fact, what they've done right now is they've even brought the front face of the columns, they've tilted them further back. The back face of the column is almost straight up so that they can get the capital underneath the beam. And when we started writing design guidelines back in the mid-90s, that was one of the very first things of always line up the face of the beam and the face of the column. That's just kind of like Architecture 101, but you cannot do that with these two houses without literally tearing off all of the brick pedestals. Basically the brickwork all has to get, would have to get removed and moved out to make that work. And so and I've struggled with that for a while, but I finally realized, hey, wait a minute, now we have the possibility of doing, and there's quite a number of them here in Tuscaloosa, but just the 6x6 timber columns with a corbelled capital and slide those out, because those can actually slide out because it's a pair, and so they can slide out to line up under the beam, because we definitely don't want to move the front wall of the house.
Because you've mentioned in your application that the columns on, let's go to the house under review, that those are likely rebuilt, right? The columns, the columns that are rebuilt columns that you have now.
Yeah. Those were not the original columns anyway.
Well, and as I noted before talking with you, it seemed kind of odd with that beam across the front. It looks like one of those columns was put in there and kind of jacking it up.
Right.
Well, and I will say, and I don't know if the commission members know this or not, but Mr. Mouzon knows of what he speaks, because
literally wrote
I had to
the
bring
book.
this in. He wrote the book on traditional construction patterns that I think some of the commission members have read in the past, but we just didn't make the connection that the fellow who wrote this book is actually here in town. So when we hear these things, and this is why I'm so sorry, you've been here for a long time, and I'm keeping you longer because I want to hear the thought process on, well, first of all, let me say this. I don't think we've had anybody come in here and give us a rationale on changing the muntin size. This is a first for us, which is great. It's super cool. I like to hear that. The change in the window, the light patterns, that's something we always look at. And the rationale that you're giving us is really important for us in considering that. But then also, one of the big things is metal roofing. And to hear you talk about that, the gauge, the height of the standing seams, metal roofs are not all one flavor. There's a lot of stuff out there, and then we talk about what's historically appropriate, what was used in the day. And so I'm really enjoying your discussion and your love of this house too. But why you're doing all of this, and it's based on very solid, let me just say this to everybody, very solid set of design guidelines, right? You've walked the walk in your career.
Thank you. Well, and let me say this too, and this is something on the roof, because I'm a big advocate for this for a lot of reasons, and the reason they used to do it in this part of the world is the fact that a reflective metal roof is one of the best passive cooling devices you can have. I mean, it'll save hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, in cooling cost over the course of a year, depending on the size of the house. And so, people talk about wanting to do the right thing, in terms of energy use and all this. That's a huge savings. And back before we had AC, you had to cool your house any way you could, and reflecting most of the sun's heat back up before it even got in the house was a great way of going about that. And so, and plus the 5E roof will, it'll last for 50 years easily before you have to do anything to it, and maybe you can just put a coat of the silver paint on it, and that extends the life a lot more. And of course, we all know that with the supposed 50-year asphalt shingles, what it really means, it lasts until the first big hailstorm, And but these are much more durable, but it's not the durability so much as it is the reflectivity, and then plus they're kind of cool again now. I mean, that's seaside roofing, seaside Florida. It's all 5E.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about your rationale for selecting this particular roof?
I'm sorry?
Your rationale for selecting this particular roof, the gauge, if we can go back to that little detail, the profile of it. Thank you. I'm losing my words.
Yeah, and if I can find, now this is just plain old galvanized. That's what they have just down at Home Depot. But if I can find Galvalume, I'll put up Galvalume instead, which will last a whole lot longer. That's more like, realistically, in this part of the world, when you're not, on the Gulf Coast or something with salt spray and all this, Galvalume could easily last for 100 years. And so, but that's the exact pattern of the 5E, or 5E crimp, they call it officially, and so that would be exactly what it would look like. The only question is can I actually find Galvalume, in this part of the world? Is it available right now? I can just go buy the 5E galvanized, just off the shelf. That's easy. But if I can get the Galvalume, I will do that instead.
Before we get too far down the road on this one, we did have a question about doors. We gave us a selection of door styles. What are you thinking?
What I'm wanting to do would be something that would be similar to the C406 in the bottom row, but I have not located the exact door. But basically, what I want to do is do one that looks exactly like what's on the application. But the C406 is close to that, but not exactly that. So I'm going to see if I can find something that is exactly that door. But it's a simple Craftsman. It's not one that has a lot of the fancy, the rail and the corbels and all this below it, and because that's more of a textbook Craftsman. Whereas the Southern Craftsman, being built in the 20s, it was not a particularly prosperous time throughout a lot of the South, and so they were simpler than the textbook versions.
Right.
And so it would be just the thing I liked about these is it was just a simple flat panel. There was no profile at the edge of the panel, or obviously no raised panel. They wouldn't have done raised panel anyway. But anyhow, more the simpler Craftsman door as opposed to something more elaborate.
Are there questions for Mr. Mouzon?
What is the rationale for not preserving what I assume to be the original light pattern?
That light pattern is not as true to the style of the rest of the house as what we're proposing to use. It actually, and I've been against the textbook styles so far, but if you look in the, in the plan books of the day, you'd be hard pressed to find a bungalow that actually had a 2/2. It just was not typical. That was that really was either the 3/1 or 4/1 in the more elaborate versions was really kind of the iconic light pattern of, for a bungalow. And you can find that all through town here as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've certainly seen a lot of them. I just sort of wanted your thoughts if you had any qualms or pangs. I mean, obviously, for whatever reason, when they were putting this house up in the 20s, they put in those windows in this particular. Do you have any misgivings about changing it?
No, because see, the thing is it, we wanted to elevate the house a little bit, but not, like I say, not completely. And for example, it is such a vernacular version that it has no express beam at all, which is really weird. Say really weird. That's probably 10 or 15% of them would have been like that. But the problem with the bungalows is the fact that so many of them had just the 2 columns. It was it's really one of the very few styles that allows horizontal intercolumniation, where you have the space between the columns greater than the height of the columns, and by a large amount. And like on Kelly's house next door, where the 2 little columns were in the middle, what happened there with so many of the bungalows is when they had the big long spans, is something that structural engineers call the load duration factor kicked in, which means that the longer the wood sits there, the more it sags. And so those 2 little columns were never there to begin with. They were put in when it sags so bad that they said, we don't want to have this fall down. So, so that's so to combine an element known to sag with no apparent beam at all is kind of like, it's sort of like inviting fate to do something bad to you. And so the thought was by coming in and building an express beam that is an architrave and a tinea and then the frieze above that, and then of course a drip cap over that, obviously. That by doing that there's a device I've used for years to kind of organize architecture in terms of how I review it when I'm what they call a town architect in a number of places, and T&Ds in Alabama and other places, but I call it the classical vernacular spectrum, and basically the most vernacular building would be a very simple barn. The most classical building in any state is normally either the state capitol building or the state Supreme Court building, and then everything else is kind of somewhere in between. And so you can dial stuff up or dial it down, but it ought to dial up or down together. So I shouldn't have a 4/1 window and then no express beam at all. They kind of move together. And so when we said that we were going to try to elevate it a little bit, that means that everything needs to move up a little bit, but not way up to the most refined version of the style, whatever the style is. And then of course there's other ways of putting it. Done some work for the Princess Foundation in New Orleans, and he calls it organic to refined. But when working with the craft apprentices down there, one of them said, "Oh, you just mean plain fancy, right?" And it's kind of all the same thing. But as long as they move together, you're good. But if one moves way down and the other one moves up in the same style, kind of looks like a Frankenstein monster. So that's one thing that we really try hard to prevent is having a building should not have a major disagreement with itself. I guess is one way of putting it.
That's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I might use that sometime in the future. Do we have any other questions for Mr. Mouzon on his application? I find this absolutely fascinating. It's really great to hear your rationale. I'm learning a lot. I like this idea of elevating it a little bit with the 3/1.
I will throw in one other thing just for kind of logistics, and that is that this is one of 2 applications that we're going to make to y'all. I wanted to get these things done right now because we have roof leaks in almost every room in the house, and there's walls are rotting under the windows where the windows are leaking, and so we want to get this stuff taken care of now. We'll come back to you later with another application for fences and a garden wall and that kind of thing. But that's down the road. So anyhow, this is step 1 of 2 is
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying.
And one quick question for you, just going back to Mr. Cox's question about the 3/1 windows.
Right.
Do we see a lot of 3/1s in town? I've seen lots of 4/1s, but 3/1s, okay. My neighborhood has a lot of 4/1s, and I think they're beautiful and elegant and have a great style to them. I'm just not as familiar with the 3/1s. The 2/2s, I think we saw an application, did we not? Was it 11th Street that there were those 2 little cottages side by, yes.
The shotgun.
And didn't they have a 2/2 as well? But they were a little, I think, down level from this structure. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
You know, one other thing on the windows, and again, I don't want to belabor the point, but we're using the Windsor Legend series, and that series came about because Windsor went to Andres Dewani and some of our New Urbanist colleagues back in the late 90s, and they said, what would it take for it, because we know y'all care very much about everything, including the windows, and what would it take for us to get our windows into T&Ds all over? And they said, well, let us design your new line. And so basically what they did is they, in like Eric Moser and I think Bill Allison might have been on that crew as well. But basically they just took the 1920s window profiles that anywhere in America you could, if a sash broke, you could take the sash in, and your lumberyard could make you one of exactly the same thing because everybody used the same profiles. And they just simply drew those up and said, here, do exactly this, and you can come in. And so anyhow, that's why we're using the Legend. And they even kept the same sizing, because right now what everybody does is every window has their own proprietary sizing scheme. So, you can't replace a pillow with a weather shield or whatever. It doesn't fit in the same hole exactly. But these are literally widths are 2 feet, 2'4", 2'8", 3 feet, and so forth.
Yeah.
Heights are 4'6", 4'10", 5'2", 5'6", 5'10", 6'2", 6'6", And so what we'll be getting from Windsor will literally go back in the same hole.
Wow. Yeah, it's very cool. All righty. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? I think it was awesome. Thank you very much. All right, so now let me open the floor to public comment. We've received nothing, right? And there's nobody here to speak in support of or opposition to the application. So let me close the floor to public comment. So guys, let's discuss or have a motion. It's a very thoughtful application with a lot of, I think, solid reasoning behind every decision made.
Motion to approve as presented.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
And we have 2 seconds. So motion to approve as presented. We will vote. Let's begin on my right this time.
Yes.
I just want to put on the record that there is an unusually highly thought out and strong justification here with a lot of research for changing the light pattern, something we almost never allow to happen. With that said, yes.
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 I want to reiterate what Mr. Cox just said. There's an extraordinary circumstance here for the modification in the light pattern, and it was done thoughtfully and with a lot of understanding of historical context. It had nothing to do with procurement or material or budget or anything like that. So I think that it is absolutely an extraordinary circumstance. Yes.
Yes.
I agree with his comments, yes.
Yes. That's great. And let me go back. No one has come to us with detail on muttons like you have. So I think that's a first for us. Your application has been approved as presented. Should anything change, no matter, what the rationale is for it, please see city staff before you proceed, just to make sure everything's okay. Good luck with your project. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you.
All right, the last case of the evening is HPC 3122. Travis Wolf petitions for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a pool in the rear yard of the property at 2117 Glendale Gardens. This is in the Glendale Historic District and Council District 2. Here we have an image of the zoning. This is on R1. Here's an aerial overview of the property. Here we have an image of the primary structure on the property. This is the adjacent northern property, the adjacent western property, and the adjacent southern property. The proposal is to construct an 18 by 40 foot vinyl lined pool with a concrete deck. So again, here's the primary structure on the property. And here's a site plan that was submitted that shows the outline of the pool. It was mentioned, and the applicant will be able to speak about the 2 feet that you see on either side. This pool will not be approved without showing 6 feet, so just wanted to make that notice. The applicant will be able to speak about what those 2 feet are showing on the site plan. This image shows a general rendering of where the pool will be located. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of space on either side of where the pool will be placed.
So the pool is somewhere within that rectangle?
Yes.
Okay.
Here are proposed renderings of what the pool would look like. And here's the second photo. Materials are for vinyl lined pool and the concrete deck. And here are applicable design guidelines. We received no public comment for this application, and the petitioner is on Zoom.
So while the application doesn't have the exact location of the pool, is that correct? We have the other details.
Right.
And it was hard to, that drawing, yeah.
Right.
Back of home. But then we've got that huge rectangle drawn on that image there, so I'm confused by that.
Right. And the petitioner will be able
Okay,
to speak to that.
that's cool. Any questions for city staff? We have none. Thank you. Hi, as soon as we get you off mute, can you introduce yourself and state your address, please?
I'm Leslie Wolf, and I'm at 2117 Glendale Gardens.
Well, thank you for your patience. We're now here to hear your application. So there are a couple of things that came up that we'd want to know about right away, and one is the location of the pool relative to this drawing that you can see, and then the other is the issue of the 2-foot concrete as shown in the hand-drawn image of what the pool's going to look like.
Yes, so that's a sunroom right there, and it is going to be the width of the sunroom, and it just comes off from that sunroom.
Okay.
In the yard. Yeah, with the concrete pad.
Great. And then tell us about that 2-foot to 6-foot change, or what's happening there.
Since our yard is so big, I wanted to make on the sides it to be more minimum looking so that we would still keep a good bit of our yard and grass. So it wouldn't look like just a big concrete pad in the back.
Right, but is it,
But it can go back to 6 feet if that's what it needs to be.
there's no regulation for 6 feet, is there?
No, so we were, I think it was confused with that being like the 6-foot side setback rather than
Got
the
it.
concrete area.
Okay, so 2 feet is within.
That's fine. Mhm.
Everything. Great, thank you. Are there any other questions about the pool? Well, Ms. Wolf, we'll put you into a holding pattern again, and if we need you, we'll bring you back to the hearing, okay?
Okay.
All right, so we have received no public comment on this, and there is no one here to speak in support of or opposition to the application, so let me close the floor to public comment, and let's discuss this with commission members.
I think this pool is more than appropriate with the size of the backyard. I see no issues.
Motion to approve as presented.
Good, so I have a motion and a second to approve the application as presented. It was somewhere over here. Oh, there we go. Okay, here we go. So, any further discussion before we move on the vote? All right, the motion is to approve the application as presented this evening. Let's begin on my left. Dr.
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
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 Ms. Wolf, your application has been approved, as you may have heard with other applications this evening. If anything should change from what we approved tonight, talk to city staff first before you proceed, and good luck with your project. And with
Thank you.
that, yes, thank you.
And wrapping up, we approved 13 expedited reviews since the previous meeting.
Thank you so much for that work, all of you. Really appreciate that. All right, everybody, that concludes this hearing of the Tuscaloosa Historic Preservation Commission. Good night.